I'm a public defender, and I've seen some real pieces of work, but this story still takes the cake. It was about 5 years ago when I was fresh out of law school, working at this tiny firm that handled misdemeanor cases for people who couldn't afford their own lawyers. I've been shadowing one of the partners for a week, learning the ropes. The firm was a disaster. Files went missing all the time, clients got treated like garbage if they weren't paying customers, and nobody really cared about doing good work. I ended up quitting after a year to start my own practice, and it was the best decision I ever made. This particular Monday, I was flying solo for the first time. My supervising partner decided to take a long breakfast, leaving me with 17 cases to handle. These were all first court appearances where I had to meet with prosecutors, review evidence, and talk to clients about plea deals. The problem was, I hadn't gotten any of the police reports beforehand and had never spoken to any of these people. So there I was, trying to read 17 police reports in 10 minutes and figure out if the prosecution's offers were fair. Then I had to meet with all the clients in about an hour because the judge wanted to wrap things up before lunch. Most people were understanding. They knew public defenders get overwhelmed and just wanted their few minutes to discuss their case. Everything was going smoothly until client number 16 walked in. The kid was 17, skinny, and had that tweaked out look some teenagers get. I started to close the door for our private meeting when his massive father and tight-lipped mother pushed their way in. I told the father that I needed to speak with his son alone. The man exploded, screaming that like hell I would and calling his own kid an idiot who needed supervision. His voice was so loud and aggressive that I knew this wasn't going to be a normal meeting. I explained that I didn't have the authority to kick out parents, but I really wished they'd wait outside. See, when parents are in the room, kids usually stick to whatever lies they've already told at home, even when there's solid evidence proving they're wrong. Without mom and dad hovering, you can actually have an honest conversation about the facts and their options. Of course, they stayed. What followed was 20 minutes of this father screaming at me, calling me incompetent, and insisting that the arresting officer had some personal vendetta against his precious son. He wouldn't let the kid get a word in when he tried to speak up. I kept watching the clock, knowing my first day excuse would only buy me so much patience from the judge. Finally, I'd had enough. I raised my voice and got the father to shut up long enough to actually discuss the case. The whole time, the kid just sat there with this smug little smile on his face. His mother never said a single word. Here's what the kid was charged with: drag racing. In our state, that's serious business. Up to 6 months in jail, 2 years probation, and over $2,000 in fines. The prosecutor was offering to reduce it to reckless driving, which would mean no jail time, no probation, and only $500 in fines. It was a fantastic deal if he was guilty. The father launched into this elaborate story about how his innocent angel was just hanging out with friends working on cars when this corrupt cop showed up and arrested him for no reason. According to him, there was this mysterious friend who was actually the one racing, but the cop ignored him because he was focused on persecuting their family. I listened to this nonsense for a while, then asked about the 6 different neighbors who had called police to report a car matching his son's description, including the license plate number and the distinctive color, racing back and forth on their street. The father insisted that those people were obviously lying because the cop had convinced them to make false reports. He claimed his son wasn't racing at all, but rather his friend was, and the friend's car looked just like his son's vehicle. When I asked for the friend's name, the father refused to give it, saying he wasn't going to get the friend involved in this mess. I pointed out that the witnesses had reported his son's specific license plate number, and that the friend would have had different plates. This triggered another screaming fit about how I was incompetent for not believing his story over the police officer's lies. He went on about how his son was so important that cops would fabricate evidence just to get him in trouble. About 2 minutes into this fresh tirade, I pulled out my laptop. You see, police cars have dashboard cameras these days, and I'd gotten the video that morning. I started playing it without saying anything, and the father finally shut up to watch. The footage showed the cop parked next to a complaining neighbor's house, waiting. Sure enough, a bright orange vintage car came flying past, followed by a silver blur. The officer waited for them to come back around, then pulled out with lights and sirens. The cars were already over 100 feet away when he started pursuing them. The camera was grainy and didn't catch the license plate, but it clearly showed the orange car with a big racing stripe down the middle. The driver took a reckless turn and disappeared from view for about 2 seconds before the cop had reached the gravel lot, where everyone was hanging out. By the time the officer arrived, the kid was already out of his bright orange car, yelling about how the cop couldn't prove anything. The silver car had kept going and was nowhere to be seen. The father started up again, agreeing with his son that there was no proof he'd been driving. I'd had enough and completely lost it. I started yelling, asking if there were any other bright orange cars at the scene and what happened to that friend he'd told me about. I pointed out that his son's car was the only bright orange vehicle there, that there was dust literally settling around his car and smoke pouring from his engine, and that the kid had immediately started yelling about proof before the cop even got out of his patrol car. I continued screaming that his story was complete nonsense, and that unless we filled the jury with mentally disabled people, they would watch this video and find his son guilty. I told him the prosecution didn't even need the video, because the jury would believe those random witnesses who had never met his son and had no reason to lie. When the father tried to interrupt, I kept going at full volume. I told him he wasn't helping anything and that I had another client to see. I explained that it wasn't my job to believe him, but to look at the facts and do what was best for his son. I warned him that if they went to trial with these ridiculous lies, the judge would know they were lying and would put his son in jail to teach him a lesson. The father shouted back that they didn't arrest the other driver, which proved the cop was targeting his son. I screamed back that the other guy had left the scene. That was it. The father and son refused to speak to me anymore, which was honestly a relief. My last client went smoothly, probably because they'd heard me yelling. The case got set for trial, and my partner had to take over because the father hated both of us equally by then. That's when we learned some interesting details about this innocent kid. Turns out he already had 10 points on his license from various speeding and reckless driving violations. In our state, you'll lose your license at 12 points. Back then, getting it back meant waiting a year and paying over $1,000 in fees. The kid was also trying to become a mechanic, and no garage would hire someone who couldn't drive to test cars. So he absolutely could not afford any more points on his license. We actually went to trial. It lasted a full day, prosecution in the morning, defense in the afternoon. The father wanted to testify, but lawyers get to make strategic decisions that don't affect fundamental rights. The kid's right to testify was fundamental though, so we couldn't stop him from telling the same stupid story he'd been telling his parents. The prosecution's case was devastating. They'd found a neighbor who had been recording the races on his phone. This guy came forward after it was clear we were going to trial, and prosecutors sent officers to canvass the neighborhood for better witnesses. His video was crystal clear. You could hear him getting excited when he filmed, and when the cop showed up and the kid started yelling about proof, the neighbor commented that the kid was crude. The video didn't show the license plate or the kid's face clearly, so the father insisted it didn't prove anything. According to him, we just had to prove it was somehow the still unnamed mystery friend. Both my partner and I tried repeatedly to explain how ridiculous this defense was. The jury found him guilty before I could finish my cigarette after closing arguments. At sentencing, the judge tore into him about his casual attitude toward public safety, his refusal to take responsibility, and his juvenile record full of traffic violations and assaults. There was a long speech about risking the lives of children playing in their yards, including a graphic story from a vehicular manslaughter case the judge had handled years earlier. The kid got 3 months in jail, the full 2 years of probation, maximum fines, and no special consideration for his age. It was incredibly hard not to take a picture of his face when that smug grin finally disappeared, but that would have been unprofessional. The father did not take this well. He made his feelings about this corrupt result very clear to the court, and not politely. The judge charged him with contempt of court, which carries up to 90 days in jail and a $500 fine. I hoped those 3 months would teach them both something, but I looked up the kid's name in the system a year later. He'd served an extra 3 months on the original case and picked up felony charges. I asked my former partner what had happened. He told me that the kid had showed up to a probation meeting drunk and tested positive for methamphetamine. When police were called, they searched his car in the parking lot and found drugs and paraphernalia. The really sad part was that his father had kicked him out when he turned 18. He was living in that orange car when he violated probation. Pretty strange for someone who had been so protected just a year earlier. I suspect the father blamed him for the contempt charge. The kid took a plea deal on his new charges, got another year of license suspension, had his fines waived due to poverty, and went to court-ordered rehab. I actually feel sorry for him. He was clearly a product of his environment, completely unprepared to function when that protection was yanked away. I hope he got clean and found a better path. The father probably still blames everyone but himself for how everything turned out. I travel for work often, so I've seen my share of airport drama. But what happened a few months ago in Madrid airport was something else entirely. I was sitting near the departure gate, having arrived super early for my connecting flight like I always do. The gate was still being used by the previous flight, a short hop to Lisbon that would probably take less than an hour in the air. I work for a consulting firm that sends me all over Europe, which is why I was in Madrid in the first place. I just finished a 3-day project with a client there and was heading back home. The client meeting had gone well, but it ran longer than expected, so I barely made it to the airport with time to spare. That's why I always book flights with plenty of buffer time. You never know what might happen. When I sat there checking emails on my laptop, I noticed the Lisbon flight was in its final boarding phase. Most passengers had already gotten on, and there were just a few stragglers left. That's when I saw her approaching the gate counter with her rolling suitcase. She was probably in her 50s, dressed in what looked like expensive clothes, and had that expression that screamed trouble. Without even a greeting or polite request, she walked straight up to the 2 gate agents and started making demands. Karen told the agent that she knew there was a free seat in first class because she had checked the airline's seat map online. She said she was a loyal member of their airline and demanded to be upgraded. She slammed what looked like a membership card down on the counter with way more force than necessary. The gate agent, who looked like he'd been dealing with difficult passengers all day, kept his professional composure. He explained that he couldn't randomly upgrade people and that she had an economy basic ticket. He told her that even if he could upgrade someone, they would prioritize standard economy passengers before her. He also pointed out that her silver card meant nothing since they had gold and platinum members on the flight who would get priority for any upgrades. Now, I fly these European airlines all the time for work, and I know they're nothing like the American carriers when it comes to upgrades. They just don't hand them out like candy. Plus, on these short European flights, first class isn't even that special. Same seats in economy, just with a blocked middle seat and maybe a slightly better sandwich. Karen clearly didn't care about any of this logic. She told him that everyone else had already boarded and threatened that she would never use the airline again if he didn't upgrade her right now. While this was happening, the second gate agent made an announcement over the intercom about final call for passengers. Karen completely ignored it, like it had nothing to do with her. The first agent repeated that he didn't have the authority to upgrade anybody because of airline policy. He explained that it wouldn't be fair to passengers who actually paid for first-class tickets. He tried to tell her she should board the plane immediately. Karen insisted that the seat was empty anyway and that he could surely make an exception just this once. When the agent tried to interrupt her to explain again, she cut him off and asked if that meant he would upgrade her. The agent looked like he was starting to lose his patience, but he stayed professional. For the third time, he told her he couldn't do upgrades. He explained that she was literally the last passenger they were waiting for and asked her to proceed to the gate immediately. That's when Karen really lost it. She shouted that she wouldn't move from the counter until he upgraded her. When the agent tried to reason with her again, she told him that unless he was telling her she was upgraded, she didn't want to hear another word about it. The agent just looked at her for a moment, then quietly said, "All right." I watched this whole thing unfold while pretending to work on my laptop. Other passengers waiting for later flights were starting to notice the commotion too. Karen just stood there with her arms crossed, blocking the counter while the minutes ticked by. After what felt like forever but was probably only a minute or two, Karen broke the silence and asked if he had made up his mind about upgrading her. The agent looked at her with the most deadpan expression I've ever seen. He told her that the gate was now closed and they were no longer accepting passengers for the flight. He suggested she go to the customer service desk to rebook on a later flight. Karen's face went from smug satisfaction to complete shock in about 2 seconds. She shouted and asked what he meant, saying she had only been standing there for like 10 minutes. The agent explained that yes, she had been there that long, but she had refused twice to board the aircraft when he told her to. He reminded her that she had made it very clear she wouldn't move from the counter until he upgraded her, which he had explained 5 times he couldn't do. He told her they couldn't delay the departure because of one passenger. Karen yelled that he should have warned her this would happen. The agent apologized but reminded her that she had specifically told him she didn't want to hear anything unless it was about her upgrade, which he couldn't authorize. She stood there for a few seconds, probably trying to process what had just happened. You could see the exact moment it hit her that she just talked herself out of her own flight. She was furious and defeated at the same time. She grabbed her suitcase handle so hard her knuckles went white, shot the gate agents the dirtiest look she could manage, and walked off toward what I assumed was customer service. I have no idea if they made her pay for a new ticket or not, but honestly, I hope they did. The two gate agents just looked at each other and shook their heads. I need to get this off my chest because even thinking about it makes me furious. And this happened 3 years ago during my senior year of high school. A little background about me: I was born with a pretty noticeable birthmark that covers about half of my face. It's this dark reddish-purple patch that goes from my temple down to my jaw. My parents had me get multiple surgeries when I was younger to try and reduce it, but honestly, it didn't help much. The surgeries just left me with scars on top of the birthmark. I've also been completely deaf since birth, so I communicate through sign language and reading lips. Despite all this, I've never really let it get me down. I had a solid group of friends who never made me feel different, and I was pretty confident in myself. I played on the school's volleyball team, got decent grades, and had plans to go to college for graphic design. When prom season rolled around, everyone was talking about dresses and dates and after parties. Honestly, it just wasn't my thing. The whole formal dance scene felt forced and fake to me. Plus, prom tickets were expensive and I was saving money for college. I had a part-time job at a local coffee shop and every dollar counted, so I decided to skip it entirely. My friends were cool with it, they knew it wasn't my scene. About a week before prom, I came home from work to find my mom sitting at the kitchen table with this huge grin on her face. She looked like she just won the lottery or something. My mom told me excitedly to sit down because she had wonderful news. She announced that she had gotten me a date for prom. I stared at her, confused, thinking maybe she was joking. I asked her what she meant by getting me a date and reminded her that I wasn't even going to prom. She insisted that I was going now, explaining that she'd been talking to her friend from book club and that her son was the perfect match for me. When I asked what she was talking about, she explained that his name was Jake and he was recovering from leukemia. She said he was such a sweet boy, and his mom thought that it would be wonderful if we went to prom together. She had already bought my ticket and everything. I felt my stomach drop. I told her she had set me up with some random guy I'd never met without asking me first. She insisted he wasn't random, and that his mother and her had been planning this for weeks. She said his mom had shown her his picture and that he was very handsome. She claimed we had so much in common. When I asked her what exactly we had in common, she explained that we'd both faced challenges with our health and appearance. She said it would be so sweet, like two kids who'd overcome adversity going to prom together. She compared it to something out of a movie. That's when it hit me. My mom had basically arranged a pity date between two people she saw as damaged goods. I was horrified. I asked her to please tell me. She didn't actually promise his mom I would do this. She confirmed that of course she had, and that his mom was so excited. She told me they had even made a photo collage of both of us to post on social media. She pulled out her phone and showed me this cringe-worthy collage with photos of me and this boy I'd never met. The caption read something like, when two warriors find each other. Can't wait to see these beautiful souls at prom. I asked her if she had posted this online without asking me. She confirmed she had and told me everyone thought it was so romantic. She said they'd gotten dozens of likes and comments about how inspiring we both were. I wanted to disappear into the floor. She had basically turned my life into some feel-good inspiration story for her book club friends to share on their timelines. I demanded she take it down right now. She asked why I was being so ungrateful, claiming she had worked so hard to make this happen for me. I told her it was because she didn't ask me and reminded her that I had told her I didn't want to go to prom. She said she just thought this would be my only chance. Those words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, waiting for her to realize what she just said. I asked her why this would be my only chance. She got quiet and looked uncomfortable. I pressed her, asking if it was because I was deaf or because of my birthmark and scars. I asked if she thought no one would ever ask me to prom normally. She claimed that wasn't what she meant. I told her that was exactly what she meant and that she thought I was so pathetic that the only way I could get a date was if she arranged some charity case situation. She told me not to be dramatic and claimed she was just trying to help both of us have a special night. I accused her of treating us like we were broken and needed to be fixed, and of making us into some inspiration story for her friends. She insisted I was twisting it all around and said that Jake's mother thought I was lovely and knew he'd be lucky to have such a strong, beautiful girl as his date. I told her to stop talking. I was so angry I was shaking. The worst part was realizing that this poor guy probably had no idea his mom had set this whole thing up either. He probably thought I was some girl who had seen his picture and wanted to ask him to prom. I announced that I wasn't going. When she asked what I meant, I told her exactly that I wasn't going, and she needed to cancel everything and call his mom to tell her I couldn't make it. She protested that they had already bought my dress and the tickets, and that his mom had rented him a tuxedo. I told her then she had wasted her money because I wasn't going to be part of her inspiration project. She accused me of being selfish and said that poor boy was going to be so disappointed. I pointed out that the poor boy was going through cancer treatment, and she had made him think some girl actually wanted to go to prom with him when really it was just two moms playing matchmaker with their damaged kids. She insisted she never said I was damaged. I told her she didn't have to say it because her actions said it loud enough. The argument went on for another hour, but I didn't budge. I told her she had until the next day to call his mom and cancel everything, or I would do it myself. The next evening, she finally made the call. I could hear her on the phone in the other room, and it sounded like the other mom was just as upset as mine was. But here's the part that really got to me. 2 days later, I got a message on social media from the boy, Jake. He had figured out what happened and reached out to apologize. In his message, he said he was really sorry about what our moms did and that he had no idea it was set up like that. He explained that he thought I had actually wanted to go with him, and he was excited because I seemed really cool. He apologized for them putting me in that situation. I felt terrible for him. He seemed like a genuinely nice guy who got caught up in our mother's scheme just like I did. I messaged him back telling him not to apologize because he didn't do anything wrong, and that I was sorry our moms were crazy. He replied seriously, saying that if I ever wanted to hang out sometime when this whole thing blew over, he'd like to get to know me for real. He said no prom drama, just friends. I told him I'd like that too. We actually did become friends after that, and he turned out to be a really great guy. He's in remission now and doing well in college, but we both agreed our mothers were completely out of line. The worst part is that my mom still brings this up sometimes, usually when she's had a few glasses of wine at family gatherings. She tells me I really missed out on something beautiful that night, and that Jake's mom still talks about how disappointed he was. Every time she says stuff like this, I remind her that she treated both of us like charity cases instead of actual people with our own thoughts and feelings. She never admits she was wrong, but she usually changes the subject pretty quickly. I'm glad I didn't go. Prom night, I stayed home and had a movie marathon with my best friend instead. We ordered pizza, did face masks, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. It was way better than being part of some social media inspiration story that treated me like I should be grateful for any attention I could get.